Welcome. Welcome, everybody.
Yay.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Okay, so this is the recording my third episode of the relaunch of Conscious Conversion. So thank you for bearing with us as we find our way. If you find any lag times in our conversation, or if we just drop off or something like that, Cashy and I are both in Costa Rica. We're in different parts of Costa Rica, and jungle life and entrepreneurship life or online entrepreneurship is interesting. So, and if there's howler monkeys and crazy noises in the background, locusts and stuff, you'll know why. Anyway, all of that out of the way. Thank you for listening to Conscious Conversion. It's a weekly podcast about how we bridge the gap between business and spirit, money and meaning, technology and regeneration in a wildly changing world. In a time of so much polarity and uncertainty, this podcast explores how together we are connecting across the planet, across our differences, and across dimensions as we build the new earth together. I am your host, Sarah Yamtich. I am, as always, so delighted to be here with you, having this conversation with people who are listening, and also having this conversation with my dear guest, Cashy Money, who I know from in-person life, from in real life in Puerto Viejo, Costa Rica, which she moved there, I think, from the UK last year. And we got to know each other because she was my yoni egg yoga instructor. So she's got so much going on, so much new paradigm, new world meets ancient temple practices, so much to offer and so much wisdom. And we have mutually inspired each other around all sorts of priestess practices. And so, Cashy, since I don't have your bio in front of me, I want to let you introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me on the new Conscious Conversion podcast series. It's really exciting to be here and to connect like this and to share the space between us in this way. So my name is Cashy. Where to start? How long do we have? I'll try and be succinct with my bio, but essentially I came to Costa Rica a year ago now. Actually, I just had my year anniversary. And
congratulations.
Thank you. It feels really good. And prior to that, I was in London for 5 years. Prior to that, I was gypsying around the world. So I left uni. I was always passionate about adventure and travel and spirituality. So once I got through education, it was really my permission slip to take off my shoes, which I literally did, and make moves around the world and just explore many different cultures, many different trainings, many different walks of spirituality and alternative communities and alternative lifestyle, really. So I trained in lots of things, in meditation, in yoga, in tantric practices along the way. I was also a belly dancer. I also performed in dance, and I was in the circus for a while. So I had a really kind of holistic journey before I met Johnny Dar, who's an artist and designer and visionary healer, Renaissance man in San Francisco in 2009. And I started working with him on art, fashion, music, entertainment experiences, film, all sorts of different mediums, with art that was designed to help people awaken and to really offer medicine in ways that people could consume and receive it on a mainstream level, really, which was a whole departure from my very alternative path prior to that. So I came into a bit more of a balanced flow, and I ended up working in different cities, in LA, in Berlin, in London. And then I came to Costa Rica a year ago, and I started, while continuing all of that work, I started doing my own women's work, different trainings and immersive journeys in sacred sexuality, in personal growth, in healing, sovereignty. And I do regular retreats now at my home in Costa Rica. And I teach yoni yoga. So I teach the Jade egg practice, which is how Sarah and I started hanging out, really. And I also have taken my work online now. So I do also offer online containers that are, like evolutionary portals, really, to accelerate personal growth and healing and to help women step more into their power and pleasure and purpose.
Amazing. You did really well of just like covering the breadth and depth of your career without it taking, the whole hour, because
Thanks.
You have so much of a rich experience in life. And I know that about you. So that was awesome. Thank you. I feel like, one of the main topics of this podcast is sort of how do we leverage technology in order to live more in harmony with our own nature, with the planet, with Mother Earth. And I feel like you are such a gorgeous embodiment of that in all the ways. I think about in terms of your work with Johnny Dar's, the visionary, he's really utilizing technology, like absolutely, like the most modern technology there is, as far as I understand from what you've described to me. So I'll just start with sort of the broad question of like, what to you does the new paradigm look like and feel like?
Yeah, so it's true. And I think of myself as someone, I'm really anchored in my body, and I'm really like, I am naturally drawn to the organic. So I had to really work on my own resistance to technology and my kind of like inabilities with technology. And I would just like, when I was a lot younger, I used to walk into an internet cafe and like computers would just break around me. Like I really felt like I had energy that did not work with technology. So when I started working with Johnny, I had to really shift out of my more, you can say hippie, you can say Luddite, whatever kind of frame of mind, and really get with the program. It's like, okay, if you're going to be pioneering the new Renaissance, then you need to be pioneering it in a way where, first of all, people can receive it. And second of all, you need to be ahead of the curve and not kind of like struggling to stay in the lane. So I had to really take leaps with technology on a personal level and train myself in all kinds of things that I'd resisted, social media being one of them, actually. And fast forward like a decade, actually, we've been working together. And now I was recently in Ibiza because Johnny invented a healing machine. It's a healing technology. It's called AOI, which stands for Art of Implosion. And this is an amazing example of like, for me, the new paradigm and how technology can help us really get there in a way that is bringing us back to our natural intelligence. So much technology that we've created as humans actually explodes our energy. Let's say social media. Most of the time, it's like we're exploding our energy outwards into this story or this influencer or this celebrity or this, media is like a real trigger this way for people to actually explode their power and give it away to other things, other people, systems, whatever. So I believe that really like the new paradigm is about technology that brings us home to our natural intelligence, that brings us home to the supercomputer that is our body, to our organic power. So when you have technology that helps to guide people home to that, then this is, for me, the technology of the new paradigm. And this is what I was working with in Ibiza with the AOI machine. It's a technology that is using light and sound. So, you need a technology to make this thing work, but the experience of it, what that technology does, and because it works with specific codes that correspond to your DNA, it activates your natural intelligence. It activates your organic intelligence. So this is, for me, the new paradigm, because technology that takes us away from us ultimately is not going to serve. That's why we're kind of in quite a big mess on a planetary scale with things like pollution, ecology, all that kind of thing. So yeah, that for me is really key. The technology needs to bring us home rather than bring us outwards.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and what's interesting too, like the definition of technology is so many people like think that have this preconceived notion or this sort of this notion that we've been fed that technology means computer chips and, like high tech, what we think of as high tech. but our bodies are a piece of technology. Crystals are technology. Sound, vibration is a kind of technology. Arguably, from what I understand, like ancient Egyptians and ancient civilizations were using extremely advanced sound technology.
Yeah.
So I think, well, go ahead.
And well, in a way, they were using technology more wisely in some ways, because they were using sound, they were using these organic technologies. And even with things like, I found this really fascinating to learn, in churches, you have like these huge organs, and like at a certain point in history, this was how they kept the general population healthy, was by like getting them all into the church and blasting them with sound, because the frequency would like eradicate the bacteria, the viruses, like literally from the sound frequencies. Because when you blast the frequency of the virus with the frequency that matches it, it kind of makes it disintegrate. Probably a really like bad scientific explanation, but you get the idea, right? So it's kind of like, yeah, these things have always been around, and somehow we got so excited about iPhones, and we got so excited about, like, say, the high-tech stuff, that we kind of like forgot along the way some of these older, more ancient technologies that the ancients were using, and quite effectively.
It's interesting because I think about, we always talk about or hear about like the harmful impacts of EMF, right? Or like, or 5G, when or Starlink that's coming from Elon Musk, and all of the stuff that's like kind of freaks people out because, they perceive, or at least in the communities that I'm in, there's a perception of like this radiation or something like that. I wonder if, because obviously we're so I don't want to be as dependent as we are on these things, but that we can utilize these things, right? We can utilize these technologies, and having widespread internet everywhere where anybody can use it from any place, while that might sound kind of freaky in some ways, it also could be extremely beneficial. I wonder if there's ways to use some of that ancient technology that can combat a virus, for instance, to somehow optimize our ability to assimilate or to deal with or whatever, and harmonize the technologies that are coming in.
So
what do you think?
Is like so much a part of my work. Like, for example, I also work with a sound healing, a technology. It's literally a light language. So this is a light language that Johnny speaks and sings, and we produced it as a sound journey, which is something that we can share digitally. So I do sort of ceremonies here in Costa Rica where people can have an in-person experience with this. But the reason we created it as a sound journey that could be, shared digitally, was so that it could reach more people. It was something that if you have one person standing there and they can deliver this light language that has kind of like ayahuasca level impact on people, that's amazing. But at the same time, if you want to really like lift the consciousness of humanity and really like help everyone to make that quantum leap that is happening anyway, but support that in people individually and in humanity collectively, then you need to be able to disseminate that experience, that medicine. And for me, it's like social media is another example. It's like a technology that I resisted so hard because I saw all the, like, even when Facebook came out, I was like, oh, like, I saw it straight up as like a problem, like not a problem, but like I was not into it, let's say. And now after like so many years, I've come around to like using social media now for my own voice, for the work that I offer, for sharing, whether it's like poetry or technologies like body technologies or whatever it is that can actually serve people, at least in my perspective. So it's like we have to walk that knife edge between like the technology having power over us when really we created it to remind ourselves of our own power. Like social media is a great example of like our psychic ability to connect with everyone all the time, So it's like, that's what technology really is. We were only able to create it because we have that technology within us. When it takes us away from that, we end up losing ourselves to it. But then we can also use it to essentially reclaim and assist each other to discover the power that we really have within us. So, you know, even this podcast, it's like, well, now people can hear this conversation. Hopefully it offers them something, you know? So we have to walk that fine line and kind of like use the technology, but not be taken by it, not be, victims of it, basically.
I love that. I mean, and that's just to kind of build on that for a second, not to be victims to anything, right? Like, I think we get so caught up, and I'm talking about my community here. Like, we get so caught up in like, what are they doing to us? And, and there's this constant, like, the dark forces are coming after us, or 5G is going to get us, or all these things. And it's like, we're perpetuating this self-other victim, perpetrator sort of mentality, where what you do and what the people and what I hope to do and what I'm thinking is this part of this renaissance and this new paradigm, new earth, is the sovereignty and the self-responsibility of like, whatever is happening, I am strong and I am powerful and I will figure out a way to harmonize this shit.
Yeah.
And I think that I want to make sure to talk most of our conversation about the work that you do personally, Cashy. I mean, like, I love what you've done with Johnny Dar. I'm super inspired by it. Like, I think it's so badass, but really what I connect with so deeply is the work that you're doing sort of, with the ancient sort of temple practices and the tantric practices. And sort of that divine feminine aspect that is really, I don't want to say waking up, but it's blossoming right now. And so can you talk a little bit about that technology?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, basically for me, that's a little bit on a more, let's say it's a little bit more of a focused market, if you like. If you're talking about sort of like the world, there's so many people who are like locked in the mainstream. So for me, initially I wasn't interested in any of that. I was like, if you can't see through the matrix, then you're an idiot. Like, that was really my take when I was like in my early 20s. And then the work with Johnny was like, okay, cool. Like, actually we have to think of the 7 billion people on the planet because we're connected with them all. And then life kind of took me back around, and it was like, yes, but when I got to Costa Rica, all this work that I've been doing, like deep personal work on an inner level for 2 decades, I was like, now is the time for you to share this, and totally authentically, like totally without filter, actually. And it's like trusting that the people who need to receive it will receive it, and you will attract the people who are ready for things like temple practices and to do things like yoni yoga, because that's like a little less mainstream, but these are technologies that don't appeal as widely, and so it's been really beautiful, because for me, it's like, it works so much with energetics. It works so much with people come to this work because they have that inner desire to transform. They have that inner desire. They have that calling within them to really unleash their feminine power. And so, you're not convincing anyone in that sense. You're just opening the door, and then you are creating a space and sharing practices and sharing transmissions that allow them to directly access that power within themselves, and helping them to decondition from ideas that basically stand between them and really embodying their true power and embodying themselves and that sovereignty. Because there's such, there's just so much conditioning. There's so many layers, social layers, personality layers that can stand between us and who we really are. So for me, it's such a joy to basically watch women, like literally even in my one-day retreats, like transform within a matter of hours. And, it's like, it's yes, it's about what I share and it's about the practices, but really it's about that, like, it's like, it's reconnecting the wires so they have access to them. They have access to their own voice, because we're so bombarded by media. We're so bombarded by other ideas, whether those ideas are like, pandemic ideas, or whether those ideas are like the 5G is going to get us, you know, or whether those ideas are whatever they are. So it's like being able to drop into the body, being able to drop into the heart, being able to drop in and hear that inner voice and basically liberate your own energy. So when it's like, we talk about empowerment a lot. And for me, the real key to that empowerment for women, you have to start at the body. You have to go through the body. And this is why there's so much out there now about pleasure and sexuality and, you know, feminine empowerment. What does it actually mean to be a sexually empowered woman and all of these things? And for me, it's really like, it comes down to, is your energy liberated to flow? Yeah, like all these practices like the yoni egg practice and the women's yoga that I teach, it's like essentially coming back to the body and being able to generate that sexual energy, which is really our life force energy. It's really our most raw and pure power. And learning how to liberate that and move that through your body and allow that to feed you and fill you from the inside, fill you up from the inside. So your cup is full and then you give to the world from a full cup. So it takes healing. It's not just something like you switch it on and like it's there. It's a journey, and it takes healing, and it takes that desire to heal. It takes that courage as well for women to really go on that journey and to face their pain and face the parts of them that have been wounded. And because this is how our energy gets held up, you know, in our field, is like through trauma and through memories that have like literally like created glitches in our own energetic matrix. And so to undo those knots and to liberate that energy, which is really like the source of our power, then we have to go there. We have to face it. We have to feel the pain. We have to shed. We have to go on that journey, and it's not all comfortable. So not everybody wants to do it. You know, it's not something you can force feed. But when people are ready and they're like brave enough to actually go there, then the transformation that is possible through these technologies is totally mind-blowing. You see people literally transform so quickly. And this for me is like how we can really harness the power of the feminine, is like by women understanding that they have the key and that they are able to open themselves. They don't have to wait for a lover. They don't have to wait for a set of circumstances. They don't have to wait to be in Costa Rica. It's like, it's possible for them to do with their own body, with their own heart, and just giving them, like, not even giving them the tools, reminding them of the tools that they already have. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. And I really believe that this work, it has to be done on an individual level, you know, and as each individual woman and man, but I work mainly with women, come to really step more and more into the power of their erotic energy, their ability to heal themselves through their own energy, then this is how we can really transform the world in a way that is sustainable, because it means every person becomes sustainable in their own energy. So this is, for me, the most sustainable technology, is literally being able to tap into that erotic energy and be able to circulate it and channel it and apply it within your purpose. I can't hear you, but I think you're talking.
All right, there we go. I had muted myself because I can hear the locusts in the background, and I realized that might be a little too much white noise for y'all. Anyway.
I could just keep talking when I get going like that. So I was like, let me.
I know. Well, you had so many good sound bites in there. There was so much juicy, good stuff in there. And I completely agree. I mean, so you touched on what people call shadow work. Mm-hmm. Right? What people call sort of like, and it's that going through the dark night of the soul and figuring out that nobody can rescue you from it. Mm-hmm. And that the only thing that can happen is that you have to pull yourself up by your own damn spiritual bootstraps. And once you've learned how to do that, and you have to do it over and over again in life, man, and the stakes just get higher. But once you've learned how to do that, and once you have the deep trust of yourself and of the reality that you've created, the community that you've created, and the people around you and the nature around you, the trees, once you have that deep trust, it becomes easier to pick yourself up by your spiritual bootstraps, energetically heal yourself, face the shadow, shed light on the darkness, all the different ways to say it. It becomes easier no matter how high the stakes are, no matter how dark it is. Oh my God. The other night, Indy always has these like Indy's my almost 7-year-old child. And he always has these little nuggets of wisdom that sometimes I think he might know what he's saying. And then most of the time he probably doesn't know what he's saying, but I just love it. And I always try to point it out to him and show him how profound it is. But anyway, the other night we had the lights off. We just turned the lights off for bedtime, and he had this cool little flashlight thing. And he said, "Mommy, the darker it is, the easier it is to see the light," or something like this. Like the darker it is, the brighter the light. And I was just like, holy shit, that's such a good metaphor when people don't understand what we mean by this, like shining light in the darkness and I remember having that thought about the full moon once. There was this full moon and I was like, wow, the brighter the moon, the bigger the shadows.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's exactly it. It's like, you have to own your darkness. You have to really, if you want to be a woman or a man that's like whole, you have to own your shadows. You have to own your darkness. And yes, you have to shed, but also it's not about trying to just erase that dark side of the moon. It's like, she's there. She has a purpose. And it's more about integrating that consciously and then being able to navigate from that conscious awareness of those parts of you rather than trying to, some people get so caught up in the judgment or in the like desperately pretending that it's not there, that their shadow is not there. And by that, I also mean their wounds, you know, and this is when people can get quite like almost exhausting to be around. And you're like, why is this person so exhausting to be around? And it's because they're running so hard from their own pain that they're exhausted. And so then they feel like exhausting, you know, whereas someone who is really like gone there, gone into their shadow, gone into their wounds, they have like, they own it, then it's a totally different energy. And these people like tend to feel more authentic. And that's what happens. It's like almost like every time you die, for me, it's so much about like that process of death and rebirth. Every time you die, you become more whole and you also trust the process of dying even more, because it's like the first time you're heartbroken, you're like, oh my God, the world has ended. Like, I'm never going to recover. And then it's like, yeah, you learn that you can, you know, get wounded and you can also heal, and you kind of like have more faith in your spiritual bootstraps. And you're like, yeah, I've got me. It's going to be okay. Like, and you trust the journey more and more. Because you're like, okay, here we go, another death. Let's do this, you know, because you know there's rebirth on the other side. So yeah, it's like coming into that real oneness. And it's like the dance of creation, you know, the feminine and the masculine. But it's a very feminine process, that death and rebirth. And this is actually why the feminine used to be so revered, like back in ancient times, where the feminine was fully understood to be that regenerative principle, like celebrated as that regenerative principle, not just because she was able to give life, like give birth, but because she bled, like simply because of her menstrual cycle and her ability to bleed and die from her own body every single month and rebirth herself, like in her own being. And that was like considered so magical, because it's so magical and it's so powerful. So it's a very feminine process, that process of death and rebirth, but it's also just an initiation process that everybody goes through, like on that journey of spiritual awakening and evolution. So yeah, it's super necessary. And in the end, you come to embrace it more and more, and you come to dwell less in it, because in the beginning you're like, oh my God, you're really floundering, you know, and then like it becomes more efficient as well, because you become more anchored in your purpose. And so it's less about wallowing in the emotion or the story of it, and more about like integrating what's helpful, you know, extracting the juice and then moving on.
Yeah. I mean, and the more and more of us that can sort this out on the micro level, like internally, you know, with our, you know, on our own, but also with the help of, you know, beautiful angelic beings like yourself that can come in and sort of show us, help us move through this, or, you know, others. There are lots of people who can sort of be an inspiration for how we can move through these dark moments. And my hope is that, you know, that we can also figure out how to do this as a collective, that if we're in like a dark night of the soul, and, possibly, hopefully, I'm trusting that we're pulling ourselves up by our spiritual bootstraps as a collective and coming through this death rebirth cycle. What is your sense of how we're doing this together as a collective, or what stage we may be in that process?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I'm so much about addressing it from the individual level, like what you said, like the microcosm, we are each the universe. It's like, even this is why sexuality is such an amazing mirror. It's like, a lot of people say, like, how you show up in the bedroom is how you show up in life. It's like such a bedrock for how you move through the world even. So, again, it's like you're bringing it back to you, like start with you. I just feel like so many people still explode so much onto the world, because the world situation is huge. Like, it's so huge. And so where do you start, And yes, if you're a leader, then you need to look at it. You need to be responding to it. But at the same time, first, deal with your own healing. And then it can become a symbiotic process. Like, you're dealing with your own healing, you're dealing with your own evolution, and you're also acting in the world, like doing a podcast like this, or, whatever is your dharma and how you are called to contribute to that evolution. And it's kind of like that. It takes trust. Like, all of this takes trust, right? It takes trust that, like, you incarnated right now in this lifetime, in this moment, because you're prepared and you can handle it. And, like, we've been here so many times on earth before. It's like coming into that remembrance of who you are. And for some people, that remembrance of who they were in previous incarnations, and then coming to stand in this moment, in this life, in this world where, like you said, it's wild and things are super intense in so many levels, and be like, no, I was made for this. I was born for this. I'm here. And everything that has led me to this lifetime, let alone to this moment in this life, has been preparing me. Like, it's all part of one consciousness. It's like having that trust that we are so connected, that we are all made of the same consciousness. So in the end, it's like, when you have that perspective, you're able to step back more and go, like, okay, yes, so much needs to be addressed in the world. So much, there's so much suffering, there's so much pain, but then also being able to have that consciousness of, like, there is a greater intelligence at work in all of this. So you need to have that faith, and that faith has to be rooted in love. Like, if you're not rooted in your heart, and I guess that's one technology that is, for me, like, one of the really big solutions or keys to creating the new paradigm, to birthing the new earth. It's like being in the heart, being able to drop out of the mind, which is always going to be trapped in that dualistic, like, thinking mode, and being able to be in the heart and drop into that heart and be emanating that heart frequency. I had a journey here in Costa Rica where it was so clear to me, and I really experienced it very, like, viscerally. I think that might be the right word. Like, we are birthing the new earth through our hearts. Like, the heart is your strongest magnet. It is like your most powerful technology, basically. So practicing, learning, reminding each other to keep dropping in, like, when it all gets too much up here, and even when it's not too much, just as a practice, because this is how we stabilize that frequency of new earth. That's how we stabilize the new paradigm. It's like, from the heart, you're connected. There's like love, there's presence, there's all these things. In the mind, you can go down so many rabbit holes, especially at the moment. And you have to kind of ask yourself, like, yes, we need to be informed. And yes, the technology is amazing because it basically brings us so much information that we didn't have access to before. But at what point doesn't it serve? At what point is it actually just in my way? And a lot of my work is actually to do with clearing people from all the knowledge, all the layers that they've put on top of their own natural intelligence and their own natural gifts and abilities, and just, like, actually getting information out of the way, because it all gets stored in your body. It all, like, layers on top of you. So you might be, like, super smart, super informed, know all the statistics, but at the end of the day, that is actually inhibiting your connection to your own power, to your own pleasure, to your own purpose. So it's, like, actually about clearing the mind, clearing the channel, clearing the body, and being able to be in the heart and have that trust. this is kind of like, for me, the practical way to actually move through the really challenging times that we're in. Because if you try and do it through the mind, and if you like geek out on all the information, it's like you're going to end up frying your brain, and it's not actually going to necessarily serve you or others.
The technology of the heart. I love it. I was listening to another podcast interview. I'm going to probably plug Aubrey Marcus's podcast on every single episode because I love it so much. All of his interviews like blow my mind and heart. And he was interviewing Zach Bush recently, and Zach Bush said that the earth, he has a thought that the earth is the heart chakra of the universe. And that is why there might be some importance as to what's happening on this planet right now, because it is that central heart chakra, and everything, you know, the macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm and vice versa and all these things. So when I think about that, when I think about how we connect to our heart, we connect our heart to the heart of Gaia, of Mother Earth, and then our, you know, Earth is actually the heart of our universe. It really is. That's the thread. That's where we are able to connect to infinity.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. And I also love the term Love Earth, which you shared with me before. And I'm like, why do we not refer to Love Earth more? You know, it's like, this is so much of my work as well. It's like, as women heal their sexual trauma, and they heal, like the yoni yoga, for example, so much about using the yoni egg is to actually clear the cellular memory of the yoni. So it's like through previous sexual experiences, through some of them traumatic, some of them beautiful, but we accumulate this debris in the actual tissues of the yoni. And that is really our plug as women into Gaia. It's like, that is designed to be our roots, our umbilical cord to plug into her heart. So literally all my practices, it's like, that's where we start. We start with like plugging in, you know, and like the more you connect with that umbilical cord and that connection between your own roots, which is connected to your heart, because the heart and the yoni are intimately entwined. So this is why, like, you know, there's not really, unless there's that you shut it down in sex, the yoni is open, the heart is open, like the heart is involved for women, especially, unless there's like a blockage and she's like blocking that connection. So essentially that is the channel. It's like our heart, our yoni, Gaia's heart. Like this is, if we're plugged into that, then we can stabilize ourselves so much more effectively. We can be so much more effective in the world, because again, things are moving, things are shifting. And it's really interesting to think of the earth as the heart of the universe. It definitely, yeah, it resonates in a lot of ways, because we are this very like critical planet somehow. And when we're able to be in touch with her heart, when our heart can stabilize with her, and also we are getting upgraded with her, right? So it's like, if people measure the Schumann resonance at the moment, it's like going through the roof. It's like shifting so much, because she is like ascending, like literally her frequency is ascending. So for us to ascend with her, then we need to be plugged in. And the more we can receive, like through our roots and through our heart, these, I don't know if it's electrons or what the actual term would be, but like those energetic transmissions from her, then we're able to upgrade our own frequency so that we're able to withstand the changes that are happening on an energetical, spiritual, emotional, all the levels. We're able to be much more stable in those, as opposed to, I heard it described once like this, and I think it always stayed with me. If you blast glass, let's say you have a glass with a certain frequency, and you're raising the frequency, raising the frequency, raising the frequency, at one point the glass is going to shatter, right? Because it just like, it cannot withstand that pitch of frequency. So it's like, if we're the glass, we need to be upgrading ourselves with the earth, so that as her frequency rises, so does ours. Whereas if we're disconnected from her and her frequency is rising, then we're the glass that shatters in that sense, because and that might look like all sorts of things. That might look like having a mental breakdown. That might look like, I don't know, just leaving the planet for whatever apparent reason. But fundamentally on an energetic frequency level, it's like we need her to help us.
It could look like a pandemic. I said it could look like a pandemic or something like that.
Right? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, like
give or take.
There's always like, yeah, there's so much behind it. It's a fascinating experience that we're all going through as humanity right now.
What do you feel like is, I don't know, part of me feels like it's so reductionist and sort of oversimplified to ask this question, but on the other hand, it's a really fun question to ask. And regardless, just let go of the fact that it's oversimplified. But like, what do you feel or dream is on the other side of this dark night of the soul? It's on the other side of this birthing process.
I've just always been in this, like, you know, belief in Eden. I've always had this belief in a whole phase of my life, it just looked like being a hippie, but it was this belief in the peace and the love and the harmony, like this absolutely rock solid belief that this is really our truth. Like this is where we can be, you know? And I think if you have that within you, it sits very deep within you. It's like, it's something you don't really learn. You know, it's like something that's just there, and you can call it faith, you can call it idealism, you can call it naivety, whatever. But for me, it was always like very self-evident. I was like, this is possible. And then at the same time, I went through all sorts of experiences with alternative communities and, you know, situations where I got to see how it didn't work. I got to see how humans actually weren't capable of that. But I never lost that faith in that vision, you know, and it comes to me in different ways. And it's just like, at the end of the day, I don't know, you know, it's like, it's a mystery. And that's part of the point right now, is like, we have to be in that mystery. It's like the baby, when it's coming out of the birth canal, does not know what the world looks like. It has no idea. All it knows is that it's moving and that things are changing, you know, but it's like, what that world looks like when it actually comes out, the baby has no clue. It's like, in a way, it's the most terrifying moment of our lives, or the biggest risk that we take is like actually being born, you know, and then the rest is like, we just keep having to go through that mystery and trusting that what's on the other side is going to be beautiful, okay, whatever it is that we hope it's going to be. So yeah, I don't know. For me, it always looks very organic, you know, because for me, it's like that paradigm exists already in nature, where it's like nature is still just itself. It's living its purpose. Every tree, every animal is just there living its purpose, contributing to the ecosystem. It's totally functional and it's totally beautiful. Whereas humans, we just got so confused about our purpose. And most humans are running around trying to be something other than what they are. So I guess in a way I see it as like where we are rooted in our purpose individually and also collectively, as like, we are guardians of this earth. We are here to take care of her. We're here to live in harmony with her. We're here to honor her, you know, and to really honor the divine, like live in that alignment with the divine. So that's how I see it. And that's how I see it existing now already. You know, it's like there's so much chaos out there, but at the same time, there are people who are living this way already. Like the new earth is already here in so many ways. And it's just like how she's going to unfold is part of that beautiful feminine mystery. But yeah, she's here and she is like in our hearts. That great technology that we have right now, sentient. It's going to take care of what it's supposed to look like.
I resonate so deeply with everything you just said, including your like initial response to the question, which is that I've always just kind of known. And it, you know, of course, and yesterday I heard that song for the first time. I was on a little mini road trip and I heard that song for the first time in a while, that, you know, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And I remember as a kid being like, I mean, what's the problem with world peace? Everyone just has to decide. And who doesn't want that? Like, and so idealistic and naive, right? On one hand. And there was a time in my life where I was like, oh my God, that little kid, she was so idealistic and naive. But I knew in my bones, deep in every cell of my body, that that there really is a possibility of a critical mass deciding to live in a new way, and that we could live in some sort of collaborative, harmonious ecosystem.
And for me,
on this planet,
yes, it's about us deciding and us coming into our co-creator power. And at the same time, it's like when you step back and you're like, this is all one consciousness, this is all a divine intelligence. It's like that to me is just inevitably where it's heading. You know, it's that return to innocence. And this is, again, like in relation to sexuality and erotic energy, it's like it's been so distorted. But when you come back to the actual innocence of it, the purity of it, and like, again, it's like that the essence, you know, it's a return to innocence in so many ways. And it's like, that's how I see it as like almost like this huge, great cycle, you know. And I wrote about this in my dissertation when I was at uni. I studied English literature and philosophy, and I was so frustrated in philosophy because they wouldn't let me say anything I wanted to say. And in English, I could say whatever I wanted as long as I had a text that was like supporting it. So I did my dissertation on Philip Pullman's Dark Materials trilogy. And I was like,
oh my God, I love that trilogy.
Yeah, I was like able to, like, it was myth, mysticism, and magic in that trilogy. And I went so deep. I was like dreaming my dissertation. I was like all in on this thing. And through that exploration, through those books and through that exploration of like whatever, everything that I studied in relation to that, it was like clear to me then at like 20 years old or whatever it was, that like, this is the journey. It is like the Garden of Eden, whatever way you understand that, you know. And then the fall, you know, this fall into, fall from innocence, you know, fall out of the garden, whatever it was, you know. And then it's like that return home to where you return to that innocence, but you're awake. You're no longer naive, you know. And I think this is really part of the spiritual path, is like, you have to wake up, and that's painful and that's messy. And you can go through so much bitterness and like rage and all these things, rage towards whatever, yourself, your parents, the society, all of the things. But you can't, it's important not to lose that innocence. It's important not to lose that belief, that part of you that is pure. And that's what's going to bring you home at the end of the day. And if you keep going and you keep maintaining that part of you without like going into like, I just don't want to know what I don't like, you know, like just keep the reality away from me. No, like be very, very, very real. It takes being so real. It takes being real and being present with all those emotions, with all that darkness, with all the chaos of the world. And at the same time, maintaining that spirit that you have, like that innocence that is still there. It's like the inner child. It never goes away. Like, it's not like we grow up and the inner child just like disappears and like checks out. No, the inner child is always there. We have to learn to reparent him or her. You know, we have to learn to nurture that innocence within us. And often as children, that innocence isn't nurtured. Like, we lose it. And sometimes we lose it violently. And it's super traumatic. And this is part of what we have to work through. But in the end, reclaiming that innocence, for me, that is the journey in a way. You know, and that is what, as a collective, is going to bring us back to, in a way, where we started, but we've been initiated now. You know, now we're awake. Now we're responsible. Now we're not just like cruising through the Garden of Eden like we don't know any different. No, we know the flip side. You know, it's like integrating the shadow. We know the other side, but now we can take care of what we have. Now we can fully tend to that garden with full consciousness and full gratitude and full awareness.
Thank you. That was beautiful. You have so much like amazing nuggets of wisdom to share. And I'm just really grateful that you shared so much. I feel like we could talk for another hour or 7 about all of this, because there's so many places where we could have dove even and deeper into that topic. Like, so many of those spots. So hopefully maybe we'll circle back and have another conversation at some point. I mean, we'll obviously have lots of conversations, but publicly. So thank you so much for being on the show. And I want to invite you to tell anybody who's listening sort of how they could find you or what's going on next in your world in terms of like, you know, your online presence.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you. It's so, you know, whatever comes out of me is so dependent on who I'm speaking to in a way. So it's like a total joy always to chat with you. And in terms of how people can find me, so now I am active on social media myself. And you can find me at kundalini.rose on Instagram, Kundalini Rose on Facebook. And my website is coming soon. It's not ready yet, but that will be kundalinirose.co. But yeah, I mean, the best way to reach me is probably through Instagram, to be honest. And I have loads going on. So if anyone is thinking of coming to Costa Rica, I have retreats here in Puerto Viejo. But I've also taken this work online because I'm super aware that it needs to reach people wherever they are. And because of the wonders of technology, then we can really do this together. And like the more I do things like this, even the more I'm like, the online experience is still really potent. And I'm experiencing it more and more with clients and with courses where it's like, wow, you know, this is actually so powerful, even though we are across the world from each other. So I have an online course coming up starting on the 3rd of February. So if you're hearing this before then you are welcome to join that. It's a 6-week immersion. It's called Erotic Alchemy. And it's a deep dive into, your pleasure, your power, healing, working through the layers, working with the best practices that I've discovered in the last 20 years of like really giving you things that you can return to again and again to support you in your journey, in your healing, in your evolution, and in really bringing alive your purpose and like living your most alive life, you know, with everything included, especially your sexuality and your sexual energy, and allowing that to really supercharge your work in all areas, your work, your dreams, your creativity, or your life. So that's what I've got coming up really soon. But yeah, if you want to connect on Instagram, I would love to hear from you. And I keep you updated that way.
Amazing. Erotic alchemy sounds like heaven. Let's do it. And if y'all what's
the
that?
whole point is to bring us to heaven, like inside ourselves and as a collective.
Yeah.
So.
Beautiful. Thank you for the amazing work that you do.
Me too.
I am so grateful for you. And if y'all enjoyed this conversation, and I can't imagine how you wouldn't if you're anything like me, then please share it with your community, share it with someone you think you would enjoy, who would enjoy it. I would love it if you left a review about what you loved most about this particular episode. And this is how we can like grow this conversation in this community. And if you're on YouTube, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And check out Cashy on Instagram and Erotic Alchemy and all the things. And keep coming home to your heart.
Thank you so much for being a wonderful hostess. It was beautiful to speak to you as always.
Aw, thank you. Mwah.